Hi, let's make a t-shirt for Amaryllis. You can find this pattern in my jeans, cargo pants, and shorts. It has a bonus Raglan Tee on my website, sandramaxrosestudios.com. Now let's talk fabric. So the easiest way I recommend if you're starting a beginner at knits is to go get just a t-shirt. Okay, you want it a one-way stretch. Notice that as I'm stretching these, it doesn't really stretch vertically, it stretches horizontally. That is a one-way stretch. Now these fabrics were from the kids section or baby section because they have small prints. This one here, notice it stretches that vertically and horizontally, warp and weft. So this is a no-no because it's a two-way stretch, so it's going to be a little harder to sew. So once you get the hang of sewing with knits and sew a few t-shirts, you can try one of these, but they are harder. I would recommend to start with a one-way stretch. So gather fabrics, cut out your patterns, and let's get her started. So you're going to have two back pieces, two sleeve pieces, and one. Those are the back pieces. This is the front piece on fold. Now if you're doing long sleeves and you get confused which is your front and your sleeve, the front piece is always going to be wider. And what you're going to do is you are going to do right sides together, pin the front seam by placing the front piece with one of the sleeve pieces. Now, what I recommend for sewing knits is a dual feed or a walking foot. And what that means is you're getting a pull from the top and the bottom so that it feeds it through correctly. And another tip is using waxed paper or parchment paper. And what you do is you just take a small section of this and keep at your machine. And this is going to give stability so that you can sew the stitches without the knit stretching too much. This is a definite bonus when you start a seam because sometimes it'll get gathered and it'll go down into your machine. You won't have that having a piece of paper, wax paper, parchment paper. You want something thin that's going to rip, but you don't want to use something like tissue because that's a little too thin and doesn't really work. So you're going to sew these seams and back stitch at the beginning and at the end. And then all you do is fold those wax paper together and it'll just pull off that seam. And trim any little strings that you have left over. And there you go, your first seam. Now we're going to do the same thing with the other side. Put the other sleeve on the other side of the front. Pin it, stitch it the same. Use your wax paper or parchment. I'm going to say wax just because that's what I use. So, but you're more than welcome to try parchment as well. I used to hate sewing knits. I was so afraid to sew them for years and years and years. Now, it's nothing. And I really like this Raglan pattern. It makes it easier to sew on the bias. And make sure you come over and you can press open your seams. Definitely do this because it helps it lay flat. And some of the stitching, it's going to help you do it, like especially on the neckline. But again, this Raglan pattern, and you can get a fit. Like if you have a torso that's smaller at the top and then wider at the bottom, this is a great pattern to use on the dolls. It fits a little better. And I just personally find it easier to sew on, and I like it, so this is the one I use. So there you go. Nice, and press it on the right side as well. Get it nice and flat. And you can decoratively stitch on either side of these seams. That's totally optional. Sometimes I'll do that if I have like a white front and back and colored sleeves. I'll stitch it just for decorative sake. But it is totally optional. Now we're going to go and sew the backs onto the other side of those sleeves. Same way we did with the fronts. I sped this up a little so you don't have to sit here all day watching it. And take your wax paper off, and there you go. Okay, now I do use a serger. You do not have to use a serger. Here you can see you adjust your settings. You'll want to try this on scrap to get the perfect setting on your serger. But you do it so that it will feed and won't stretch the knit as you send this through. And if you don't have a serger, you can always just stay stitch it with your regular machine, just so that it has a little stability when you go to turn this these edges back and stitch them. So here I am serging the bottoms of the sleeves. Again, you do not need to serge. And the sleeve hems, you could even go without stay stitching. These aren't too bad, but the neckline, right here, I'm going to show you. Okay, so the neckline, the rounded neckline, you definitely want that serged or to stay stitch, which means you sew along the stitching line so that it gives it stability, so when you turn it back, it doesn't stretch and get out of shape, so that your neckline lays nice and flat. I really like my serger. Once you get the hang of it, I don't even touch 90% of what the serger could do, but I do like it for what I do use it for. Now I'm going down the back sides, like the opening of the back, both sides of the back. A stitch along that as well. Again, if you're just stay stitching, you really don't need to do this. I just do it because I'm serging, and it gives a little stability when I go to turn it back. So then you come over, you're going to turn it up, press it really good. You're going to do both sleeves, sleeve hems. Press it really good. You can use a steam. This is a little travel iron I've had. It was bought in the 80s, so see how old it is and how well it's lasted. If I need steam, I just use a spray bottle. So here's where we are going to turn back the neckline. As you turn it back, press it. And you're going to like sort of fidget it a little bit so that you get the shirt laying flat and you get the neckline turned back. It will stretch slightly, but it's not going to stretch out of shape that it's not going to lay flat. You don't want to overly stretch this neckline. You just want to stretch it enough that it turns back nicely. And you really, really, serged or stay stitch, want to press it. So that's going to hold it laying where you want it. And as you can see, I'm, moving it as I go. And there you go. It's laying nice and flat, how you want it stitched. And then I go ahead, press it again. You want this to hold where you've turned it back. And then you can flip it over and go ahead and give it a press on the right side. And look how nice that's laying. Okay, wax paper again. Now, if you have a speed control on your machine, you'll want to turn it down. Take this nice and slow. There is no reason that you need to sew super fast and lose control. Take it as slow as you want to take it. And this is sewing anything, straight seam or the neckline seam. Go at your speed. No one's there to tell you to go faster. Do it your way. But on the neckline, I like to take it nice and slow, so I'm following the curve because you want to be just that 1/8 inch off of the edge so that you catch that turned under seam. Because if you go too far away from the edge, you're not going to catch it and it will turn back. So just take it nice and slow. Take your wax paper off. There you go. Look at that. Nice and simple. That is the hardest part of making the t-shirt, is the neckline. Everything else is straight stitches and you shouldn't have a problem. So now I'm going to go ahead and hem the sleeves. I typically just use a straight stitch to turn up these sleeves because they're large enough that you don't need that extra stretch. If you're doing long sleeves and you want them tighter around the wrists, because you always have to make sure that your arm, the hem of the sleeve, that you can get your doll's hands through them. But if you want it somewhat tight, that it can have a little stretch, I'm going to show you a stitch to use on what I use on the hem. So you can use that on your sleeve hem as well. But seeing that I'm doing a short one, there's extra room. It doesn't need to stretch, so I just go ahead and use a regular straight stitch. Okay, there you go. Your hems are, or your sleeves are hemmed. Your hems are sleeved. Okay, now we are going to do the underarm seam. So what we're doing is we are matching those raglan seams. That is primarily what you need to match, is match those seams and then pin to the hem. Sorry, I'm off screen here. And then place a pin down to the bottom hem as well. Once I get it on camera, you'll see. And again, get that wax paper out. I'm telling you, it is a lifesaver. It'll change sewing on knits for you. You can also do this if you're sewing on anything slippery, that you need a little stability. Use the wax paper. But I'll tell you that, so you sew up and you're going to pivot at that where those seams meet. And then sew down to the sleeve hem. Once you try walking foot or a dual feed, it's going to change your sewing. I actually, unless I need a special foot for something, I usually have my walking foot on no matter what I'm sewing on, wovens or knits. So what we are going to do here is we are going to clip off the threads, and then we are going to clip up into the seam allowance so that you're clipping right to that pivot point. And that'll make it so that it'll lay nice for you. So there's your side seam right there. So we're going to come over, and I like to, since it's a knit, you don't really have to serge the edges. So I like to open those seams so it'll lay nice and flat. And then I turn it over And I will press it this way so that that sleeve lays nice and flat as well. And look at that. Look how nice it is. And I really recommend when you first try your first t-shirt, go use like a regular t-shirt jersey. There's so many prints, like there's prints that I've fallen in love with and I've tried to use and they're just too stretchy. And it's just not worth the hassle trying to sew something this small. So, but try some plain ones first in a regular t-shirt jersey. Go to Walmart, buy a $5 shirt. You can get how many t-shirts out of it. Practice, practice. And don't get discouraged if the first one doesn't turn out. Yeah, it's always a learning curve. You have to do it over and over again. So there I'm serging the bottom hem. Again, if you don't have a serger, it's not necessary. Now turn this up, press the hem up. And there you go. Now, if you have a machine, get your instruction manual out. And if it's a relatively somewhat decent machine, you should have something that is called a knit stitch on it. And what it is, it's a very narrow zigzag stitch. When you stitch it, it looks like a regular stitch, but it has a bit of a zigzag to it so that you can stretch the seam. If you're working on some like an older machine that doesn't have too many special gadgets on it, you can use just a zigzag stitch. It's just, you're going to notice it more than with a knit stitch. Now this, it takes a while because it goes a little slower. I mean, I'd have to figure out how many years. I used my grandmother's 50s Kenmore, which had a straight stitch and a zigzag stitch, and that is it. And I sewed everything on that thing, from heavy leathers and jeans to, I used to do weddings, and I sewed wedding gowns and bridesmaids dresses and prom dresses on that thing. So it's all in. There you go. See, it just gives it a little stretch so that way it can fit over the hips nicely. So now we're going to go ahead and do the back seam. All you're doing is matching up the bottom of the hem. I really need to get my other camera set up so I can have better videos for you guys. I'm sorry. Okay, now you'll have marked where the start point is. Should be a dot on your pattern, and you're just going to stitch and back stitch and go down that back seam. And you don't even have to sew the back seam. You can leave it hanging open if that's easier for you. I just like to have the bottom stitched because it lays better on the doll. But you're more than welcome to do your shirts the way you do them. Then you fold that left one over. So that seam is going to be pointing towards your left-hand side, and press it. And then you're going to sew some snaps or Velcro there. And that's going to be your t-shirt. Look how nice that fits on her. There's my grandmother's 50s Kenmore sitting back there. That machine's my backup workhorse. I'll never get rid of that. And there she is in her little overalls with her nice new t-shirt. So get that fabric out and get practicing.